Dobro večer, dragi gledatelji. Dobrodošli u 1 na 1. Veleposlanik države Izraela Republici Hrvatskoj, Garyjem Korenom, je večerašnji gost. Dobro večer, dobrodošli.
Dobro večer.
Mi smo već stari znanci u emisiji, pa ćemo odmah krenuti na posao, jer vas nemam zašto predstavljati. Svi znaju već da ste vi u Hrvatskoj, koliko je sad, 2-3 godine?
2,5.
Bio je ministar vanjskih poslova Radman u Izraelu, sada u ožujku. Kakav je opći dojam o odnosima države Izraela i Republike Hrvatske?
Well, first of all, good evening to all the viewers, of course. But I think it was a very good visit to judge by a very warm conversation between the two ministers and the subjects that were raised. I think it's, for us diplomats, it's one of the clearest indication of the close, very good relations between our countries. The fact that Minister Garyjem Korenom visited Jerusalem, I think it's for the 4th time. And his previous visit was just 2.5 weeks after the 7th of October. After the terrible event, after the attack of Hamas. So it's very significant and very highly appreciated in Israel.
Što je pak po vašem dojmu karakteriziralo dosadašnju suradnju i ima li prostora, uvijek ima naravno, ali gdje ima prostora za buduću suradnju Izraela i Hrvatske?
Yeah, so as I mentioned, we were discussing not only the situation in the Middle East or in Europe or globally, the ministers, of course, during the visit, but also concrete issues, connected cooperation, bilateral cooperation between our countries. I would like to make a case for 2 examples which are relevant, I think, also to the Croatian public and to the Croatian government and to Israel has a lot of experience, maybe more than anyone, regarding how to work with your diaspora. And you have, in Croatia, you have quite a significant diaspora globally, Northern America, in New Zealand, Australia, Latin America, and so on. We have different ways to work with our diaspora, and we are ready, as Minister Garyjem Korenom expressed, a desire to share our experience with Croatian experts. That's one of the concrete examples. Hopefully there will be a delegation coming to Israel, and my minister asked us to prepare in headquarters possible meetings, so we are standing ready. Second issue, Israel is very strong when it comes to economic affairs, especially the field of high-tech and innovation. Again, that was, and Croatia is doing quite nice, by the way. There is 2 issues I would like to mention. This case of innovation and sharing the experience. One, on a government level, government policies, we have a centralized authority, innovation authority, that basically has budget and ways how to support startups. And according to the figures, we are doing among the best in the world. I can give you a very fresh example. Just this week it was reported also in Croatian media about the Israeli company called Wiz, W-I-Z, Wiz, that was purchased by Google Alphabet for $32 billion. It's an amazing amount. I think it's one of the biggest, if not the biggest acquisition made by Google ever. What's interesting, the company Wiz was established only 4 years ago as a startup. Field of cyber, field of cloud, okay? Everything now is on clouds, and including the rain outside. So we are not just, we really have great experience in this field, and being here for those 2.5 years, I also met great people in Croatian Academy and Croatian business, and there are some wonderful successes also in Croatian side. The challenge is how to go global, how to become a significant and global economy in different fields. And there are points of strength on Croatian side, and I think we can successfully cooperate. Recently, we had a joint event, online event, So make it easier for people. You know, we used to, before COVID, and it was quite normal to people to travel to have business meetings. Now, one downside in our relations is only the fact that we don't have direct flights. So make it easier. They will restart, and we are thankful to Croatian Airlines as well on this point. One of the things we introduced as an embassy, with a great cooperation with different ministries and state institutions and businesses, is we are doing webinars in fields of joint interest. It can be in the field of advanced agriculture, but the last one we did in the field of innovation in the ports. I mean, after all, Croatia is a country with a huge coast, 1,000 kilometers. You have at least 2 big ports, like Rijeka and Ploče, and some other ports. And we know how to upgrade the ports to function, let's say, not only in 21st, but also 22nd century. And we created a platform in which startups from Croatian side and startups from Israeli side discuss different matters, that how to improve the logistics, with the huge logistics of moving cargo in the ports. And people, again, here doing great work, for instance, Gateway project in Rijeka, but also amazing work done in Ploče. And we have also to learn quite a lot also from Croatian side. And I think it's part of also bilateral trade relations, because the trade comes, most of the trade comes in goods, comes through maritime transportation. Again, I would like to express our gratitude to the Ministry of Transport and Maritime Affairs for the support of this event, and to the authorities, those support. So we are planning to do much more. Tomorrow I'm going to have a meeting with a great guy. I don't want to embarrass him, so I will not mention his name, but this is about space, cooperation in the field of space. Croatia is part of the European Space Agency. Israel is a partner with the Space Agency. We have launching capacity. We have satellites that we launch for our own needs, economic or defense. And there's some good work also done in this field, including by some strong startups. So you can almost any field of modern economy you can touch. There is a potential for cooperation between our countries. And frankly, it's without any limit. My task, and also task of Croatian Embassy in Israel, is basically to enable this to happen in a much faster tempo, and to enable the business people and economic community to cooperate.
Sjajno. Zapravo nisam očekivao da se toliko bitnih, velikih stvari u međuvremenu dogodilo na dobre. Jedna stvar se desila za, evo, stalno imamo, dakle, sliku našeg ministra vanjskih poslova ovdje, pa kad je već na ekranu, da spomenemo i otvorenje kapele hrvatskih blaženika i svetaca na Pastirskim poljanima u Betlehemu. Što to znači za hrvatske vjernike, ali i za međureligijski dijalog i odnose?
Well, I first of all have a lot of respect to people who were involved in this process. Although Israel is not directly involved, of course, but I can understand the spiritual significance, historical significance for Croatian people, whether devoted believers, Catholics, or any Croat. I think it makes the connection to the, if you like, to the Holy Land much more significant. And I've seen the videos from the event. It was majestic almost. And it's beautiful architecture. I think it's will become probably a major point for any Croat who will visit, or any other Catholic who will visit in the future, not only Jerusalem, Galilee, and the Dead Sea, but also Bethlehem, because of this historical significance. Again, it's a great work. The Ministry of Foreign Affairs of Croatia and all other authorities, and the Catholic Church and the Franciscan brothers who work in the Holy Land. So I can only admire, to some extent, this project. The spiritual side is always a strong component in the relation between any two friendly countries. it adds some emotion. Although we are a Jewish state, but we respect all the religions, and Jerusalem is holy for Christianity, for Islam, and for the Jewish people, of course. It was a capital of King David 3,500 years ago. So we have some, more than some understanding about holy places, and we always would like to have them open and free to other believers.
Jedno pitanje koje je možda neobičajeno. I prije sam naravno imao za goste veleposlanike Izraela, ali od vremena gospođe Zine pa po imenima često smo postali i dobri, neću reći prijatelji, ali dobri znanci. Ali recimo sa gospodinom Milanom i dalje sami ste svjedoki, imam dobre odnose, pa i surađujemo. Evo, predložio mi je jednog gosta na opće zadovoljstvo. Sa vama mogu reći imam prijateljski odnos, no mimo tog mog osjećaja imam osjećaj da hrvatsko-izraelski odnosi ili izraelsko-hrvatski odnosi nisu nikad bili bolji. Što vi mislite?
They are good friends of mine, and I'll definitely will call them this evening or tomorrow to tell them that you are very much remember and cherish the friendship with them. Well, again, I feel in unease because it's always it's not just historically or correct being a diplomat to compliment my predecessors, but definitely the status of relations between the countries is a layer of things that were made before, since we started almost 3 decades ago. There were visits not only of high-ranking officials, of presidents, of prime ministers, of foreign ministers, other ministers, but it's also about people to people. I think as many Croats will visit Israel, it will be easier, first of all, to learn about my country, to learn about greatness of Israel. Of course, as I mentioned before, for many it's important to visit the holy places, but also to meet friends, and so on and so forth. Israel is a strong country. From many points of view, Israel is let's say, the most modern country in this part of the Middle East. It's a liberal democracy. And again, I think we have a lot of common things that we share about the values between Israel and European countries, between Israel and most of the Western countries. So Croatia is not different in this sense. And every country brings its own taste, its own uniqueness of its history, about its language, about its religion, about its culture. Cultural exchange is a great thing in modern diplomacy. So you cannot, you cannot deal only on political and security matters, only economic matters, and they're of course very much important. And as I mentioned before, two sides would like to see our economic relations going much, much beyond what we have right now, but also about the culture. I think many Israelis visited, I think hundreds of thousands visited Croatia in, let's say, last decade, many more even before. And it still attracts, of course, a lot of Israelis. I think they also in this way can learn about Croatia, about many beautiful places, and to understand better what Croatia has to offer, when it comes to food, or to beautiful beaches, or to beautiful nature reserves, and just sitting in somewhere near Dolac and drinking coffee in Croatian slow way. That's something unique.
Recite da krenemo na ove ružnije stvari od kavice na Dolcu i naše obale. Što se sve dogodilo i što je dovelo do okončanja primirja?
Yeah. Okay. It's a very sharp, very strong turn, but it's unavoidable. Of course, we have nothing to hide, and we have to speak because people, in a sense, it's connected to what I was speaking before. It's very easy to judge Israel. Some people don't bother some people are disturbed, some people show solidarity with the weak, those that they conceive as a weak. Okay, in this case, let's say Palestinians. But I'll start with the point that you asked. What happened is that Hamas was offered twice a framework deal to prolong ceasefire by US. We even had 2 rounds of negotiations, kindly hosted one in Doha, Qatar, and one in Cairo, capital of Egypt, and still Hamas said no. Our experience, and again, no one can teach us about experience of working with terrorists, shows that some, in this case, organizations, jihadi, Islamist organization like Hamas, has its own agenda of survival, okay? And they would like very much to preserve the card of hostages. So we know that the only way to make them to reconsider their positions, and again, they declined twice, was to increase the pressure. And if Qataris or Egyptians or other parts, whether America or Europe, cannot convince Hamas, and they are the effective rulers in Gaza, unfortunately for the Palestinians, then the only way out, they understand, is military pressure. So this is the situation that occurred just a few days ago. And they're still sticking to this position.
Da. Mada je bilo gotovo izvjesno da će se...
If someone in Zagreb, Zagreb, not necessarily big capital, will come with a productive proposal, okay. I mean, that's my task, to communicate. And frankly, I was meeting with some people that had some ideas from regional situation, okay, from the past. But not everything can be applied to the Middle East, unfortunately. I'm speaking about Dayton and stuff like that.
Ostaćemo upravo zbog... I sami ste počeli objašnjenja i završili s ovim prijedlogom, ako neko u Zagrebu ili bilo gdje na svijetu ima neki prijedlog kako da se to pametno i pravedno okonča, svako bi to vjerojatno Izrael prihvatio. Ostanimo dakle u Gazi i ostanemo na toj bolnoj temi, ako ste rekli da je bio nagl prijelaz, ali to je neizbježno. Još je 59, mislim, taoca. Kako reagiraju obitelji i na koji način se zapravo pokušavaju ti taoci vratiti?
Okay, I want to add, of course, to the things that I mentioned. The military activities were renewed not just for the sake of punishing Hamas, not the Palestinian people, but putting pressure on Hamas. They were made also in, let's say, careful consideration that they may bring to release of the hostages, of course, through renewed deal. And before coming to the numbers and what about the families, it's important to stress that Israel, for the moment, is not stopping the diplomacy. We just were hosting this morning High Representative of the European Union, Kaja Kallas, and it was part of the discussions that she had in Jerusalem, including with my minister, Gideon Saar. So, again, the situation is, as was also mentioned during a press conference in Jerusalem, with Minister Garyjem and was repeated with the High Representative of the European Union, that the hostilities can stop any moment. It just needs that Hamas will stop and will come out with a statement that A, they are releasing the hostages, and B, they are putting down their weapons. We offered different solutions. If they want to leave Gaza, we don't care. They can leave Gaza too. I'm speaking about Hamas commanders and leaders who stayed there. And then it can be reached peacefully. But for the moment, they are not exactly accepting those ideas. Coming back to the families. Families, of course, in a very dire situation. I think most of the Israelis share this very strong concerns for the fact that still there are 59 hostages kept in Gaza. We are not sure. Some of them definitely alive. We know about some of them that are definitely not alive. And hopefully that our statistics or our information will be mostly in a direction of having most of them coming back alive. Families have a legitimate concern. It's understandable that also the military activities that Israel now exercising may be harmful to the fate of the hostages. We know from those hostages that were released that there were cases that Hamas terrorists who were guarding them actually were behaving very violently every time that Israel was continuing with the attacks. So maybe, I hope, nothing of this type will happen that will endanger their life, and definitely not by our attacks, but mostly by kind of act of revenge of the Hamas terrorists. So this is the, let's say, very sensitive, emotional state the families of the hostages are right now, and unsurprising, they also express it through the media, but also through demonstrations on the streets of Jerusalem and Tel Aviv and other cities.
Vi ste u jednom odgovoru na početku vrlo jasno napravili razliku između Hamasa i ljudi u Palestini, Palestinaca. Kad pogledamo ovu sliku, recite vi meni prvo zašto međunarodna zajednica ignorira činjenicu da se Hamas skriva iza civila?
Well, that's a very correct question. Even some of the, or most of the resolutions of UN that we expected that will be balanced in some way, mentioning Hamas, mentioning their tactics, it didn't happen, okay? So if people would like really to understand this kind of enigma, we don't have a simple answers for that. That's very terrible. Also, Hamas knows how to manipulate public opinion in Arab countries, in the Muslim world. It's done very easy. It's out of sympathy and solidarity and compassion. But also when we're speaking about the West, and we have seen demonstrations in major cities in the West, campuses, those who are demonstrating against Israel, they never mention what Hamas is doing. They're basically speaking about the numbers, they're speaking about the casualties, they speak about civilians. Okay, it can be understood to some extent. They never bother to blame Hamas for its genocidal policies. Hamas is looking to erase the State of Israel of existence. We look on this war, on this conflict, existential one, okay? And sometimes, including in the West, it's judged in a very different way. It's about reframing and understanding who stands behind it. Very rarely, okay, very rarely, for instance, Iran is mentioned, but Iran stands to a great extent behind Hamas with its objectives.
Kako je i kolika je vjerodostojnost izvješća Ministarstva zdravstva u Gazi o broju žrtava?
I wouldn't call it zero, but it's manipulation. Okay, I'll just give you just one example. They never bother to mention the number of militants, of terrorists, okay, among the total number. And, you know, it's still a big number, but according to our assessment, at least half of the people who were declared as dead, okay, by those authorities, were bodies of terrorists who were brought to hospitals. So it's, by large extent, it's manipulation. which is supported, very unfortunately, by some networks. And we are living in an age where it's very hard on many other occasions, not only those who connected to Israeli-Palestinian conflict, to distinguish truth from fake. And it's very easy just to use this number, again, without making direct connection to Hamas responsibility to those victims. Okay, so we have at least two issues here with militants, terrorists among the statistics of the dead, of the victims, let's call it. And the other one is what I just said. You know, it's about the fakes. We have videos of people who suddenly appear as among the victims, and then you see the pictures were made in Halep in the civil war in Syria. We have videos of families who come to hospital to identify the bodies, and suddenly the body stands up and says, "Mom, it's me, it's okay, I just put some red color on myself, it's not blood." So there are a lot of fakes also.
Htio sam kazati, kad se stalno pozivam na ovu sliku, jer je zaista ovako tragičan prizor, što izraelske obrambene snage, IDF, što rade da bi se zapravo pokušalo umanjiti civilne žrtve? To je najlogičnije pitanje. Kad se ovako nešto pogleda, gotovo da je za pretpostaviti da...
No, fair enough. First of all, we mentioned before that Hamas is using the policy of hiding behind the human shields, what's called. Hamas, and I'll mention what Israel is doing immediately. Hamas is using civilian infrastructure to keep the ammunition or to keep production of their rockets there. Sometimes it's done in schools, sometimes it's done in UN facilities. What Israel is doing, Israel is announcing in advance and calling the civilian population to leave the areas where the attack is about to be executed. And so we give them a few hours to leave the area and to relocate to safer zones. Okay, we do it also in coordination with those UN organizations in Gaza that we trust, unlike UNRWA. That's one. Secondly, we're using normally, first of all, we target the terrorists. We have a strong intelligence. We know there is a presence of some commanders of Hamas or Palestinian Islamic Jihad. So we do have aerial surveillance. We know if they're there. And if there is under surveillance, we see that there are civilians around, normally we postpone the strike. Okay, that's a common practice of the Israeli Air Force. Not to have a strike if we have a great percentage of collateral damage. Secondly, we're using small ammunition, which has most of the cases on specific targets, which can have a limited effect. Okay, it sounds maybe not so nice, but this is the war. Okay, this is the war, and in case we're trying to fight a terrorist organization that calls for our destruction. If there were any ways to avoid it, but the conflict with the Palestinians, Hamas in this case, terror organization, goes for decades. Just to remind your public, your audience, Israel left Gaza in 2005. 20 years ago, it could have become a laboratory of peace and coexistence. They choose to rearm themselves. They choose to continue calling for destruction of Israel. They choose to educate their children for hate and for terror and for murdering Jews. So this is what we have to deal with. And this is, by the way, what are you showing? As bad as it looks, as terrible as it looks, this is the price for Hamas policies.
Da, sad ste mi dali šlagvort za sljedeće pitanje samim spomenom prošlosti, tog nekog kontinuiteta koji je doveo, kontinuiteta odnosa koji je doveo do ovako tragičnog ishoda. No, ako se pogleda u budućnost, što uopće može biti ishod toga rata? Recimo, počnemo od činjenice da su pregovori propali. Izrael ima u SAD-u snažnije no ikada, iako od uvijek ta potpora SAD-a snažna, ali Trump je do te mjere naklon Izraelu da ne bismo mogli zamisliti veću naklonost. I kad mi govorimo o ishodu, što se zapravo krije pod tom idejom rivijere? Ona zvuči ovako nevjerojatno bizarno, ali i pretpostavlja jasno moguće preseljenje i tako dalje. Ali kako vi u Izraelu gledate na tu ideju?
Okay, there is one topic that everyone agrees. When I say everyone, it's not only US and great friend of Israel, President Trump. You will say you will have the same support in Europe and most of the countries, and maybe the audience will be surprised. The same support exists in the Middle East because no one would like to see Hamas staying in power, including in Egypt, including in Jordan. Okay, in most of the Arab countries, Hamas, as a part of the Muslim Brotherhood, is prohibited. Okay, and they're very much concerned with the radical ideas of radical Islam that Hamas represents as a danger not only to the Jewish people, to the Jewish state of Israel, but also to the well-being and stability of any other. So coming from this basic point, everyone understands for the sake of the Palestinians, for the sake of the ideas of coexistence between Israel and the Palestinians, Hamas should disappear from the political life in the Palestinian. They shouldn't stay in Gaza. I mean, we were clear since the beginning. We don't mind. We will be working together with our friends in the West, with the regional countries about who will rule Gaza eventually. It's our interest to have Gaza peaceful. Gaza until 1967, was under Egyptian rule. Judea and Samaria, so-called West Bank, were under Jordanian rule, okay? Nowadays, if people would like to see any kind of formula for peace cooperation, peace negotiations, we need to get rid of Hamas. It can be done whether through military means or through their own decision to leave Gaza. It happened to Arafat in Beirut in 1982, just to remind younger generation that maybe is not aware. 1982, Israel had a siege on Beirut. At that time, PLO was fighting like Hamas is fighting us now. And they had a choice to stay in Beirut or to leave. And they left. They left to Tunis. And then it actually made a possibility to speak about peace process possible. So they have two ways. And then Gaza needs demilitarization, okay, and de-radicalization. So it's about education mostly. Okay, we cannot allow for the situation when UNRWA schools which were supported by money from European taxpayers that was given to UNRWA, textbooks were calling for terror, for slaughter of Jews, and for hate. So if you would like, for the sake of Europe and for our sake, that Gaza will be, it sounds maybe civilized, okay, and not Hamastan, and not a terrorist state, then there isn't any other magic formula, okay? This is the way out, and the idea how to come to it, again, is or under pressure Hamas will leave Gaza, or Hamas will be eradicated. And who knows, maybe the war will continue more weeks and more months. And then it brings us to the question of the population. Someone was telling me, and just 1-2 sentences. Someone was telling me...
To sam htio baš upravo kao presudno pitanje, jer sad kad ste ovako tišim glasom rekli, to je strašno bolno pitanje, ali zaista je preostalo. Mi ovdje imamo iskustva sa tim, tako da vrlo dobro znamo, mislim, što to znači. Ukoliko se ovako nastavi, mislim, preseljenje će biti prirodna posljedica.
I'm not sure. There were so many reactions made about that this is impossible that no one actually thinks why it was natural, for instance, for Europe to open doors for refugees from Ukraine, and why it's unnatural to ask the same for the Arab countries. I mean, it's the same nation. Why they cannot be compassionate to allow for Palestinians, you know what, for temporary presence, to leave in order to clean this rubble, to clean the unexploded ammunition, and to build. Okay, forget about names, Riviera, or whatever. People should think logically. Is it normal for people to stay in Gaza when military activity is taking place? It's a small place. Of course, there are some safer zones, okay, that we are not attacking. But Hamas firing from there, by the way, and not once and not twice. So we would expect much wider support, okay, for ideas of at least temporary relocation, of partial relocation, until things become better. But as long as Hamas rules Gaza, it will not happen, because we cannot afford for Hamas to survive, okay?
Kakva je budućnost pregovora? Kakav je arapski plan?
Our plan was, first of all, a reaction to proposal of President Trump. So it looks like that. Maybe it contains some elements which can be considered, but we decided for the time being that it's short of, okay, it's short of one major element, Hamas survival, okay? So if their plans speaks about immediate future, we would like to have something much more speaking about medium and long term as well. So as long as there will not be a clear statements regarding Hamas elimination or Hamas living in Gaza, probably many countries in the world, for good political reasons, probably for representing their own interests, whether in Europe or another place, will be supportive of this plan. But my feeling, there will be transformation. And by the way, again, to be clear, we are thankful to Egyptians. We are thankful to some extent to Qataris. Right now, apparently, there are calls. There is some information coming about Egyptian attempt to modify American proposal, so maybe Hamas will be able to receive. So as far as I know, we are still studying in Jerusalem. And again, I don't know. Maybe tomorrow there will be another prolongation of ceasefire, okay? We are doing it mostly in order to convince Hamas that he has no cards in his hands. He believes he has two cards. One is the hostages, and second is staying in Gaza, if not as ultimate rulers, at least on a model of Hezbollah in Lebanon. As you know, since 2006, Hezbollah and Lebanon were actually the effective rulers of Lebanon, not responsible internally for administration of Lebanon, just being part of the political system, but actually being the most strongest force that no one dare to challenge. So this is something that Hamas probably, to judge by the statements of some of its leaders, can live with.
Prije ste spomenuli da je Hamas samo proksi Irana, Hezbollah također. Imamo situaciju u Jemenu. Na koji način se danas Izrael odnosi prema, recimo, Hutima, prema tim izvorima prijetnje? Dakle, nije tu samo Hamas. Šta je sa ostalim, dakle, iranskim proksima? To je smisao pitanja.
Well, Iran apparently designed a strategy already probably more than a decade ago of building a network, if you like, or axis of resistance, what we call it axis of evil, of different proxies, which included Palestinian Sunni organizations in Gaza, mostly Hamas, but also Palestinian Islamic Jihad, including Hezbollah, the most powerful proxy, the Shia militia. Again, they were the strongest force. They are still the strongest force, but not as they used to be. in Lebanon. Then Iran established Shia militias in Iraq and in Syria. During Assad days, there were Shia militias, and elements of the revolutionary Iranian Guards were stationed in Syria itself. And then, of course, the Houthis, the latest addition that were on the map of a conflict, but with their neighbors in the area, with the Saudis, with the Emiratis, and different other countries. So, again, Houthis are Shiites. Houthis were supplied and trained like Hezbollah and like Hamas by Iran. So definitely Iran stands behind this everything. Part of it's what we call ring of fire around Israel. And basically, in order to deter Israel from doing whatever contradicts the plan, regional plan of Israel, or also their nuclear program, and so on and so forth. We feel, and I think other countries in the region, but also in the West, people who follow, let's say, what's happening in Iran, that Iran is still very much committed with its plans against Israel, but to greater extent, those capacities were eroded by Israel, mostly what happened with Hamas, lost most of its military might, I would say, and Hezbollah that was given a very strong blow by Israel by elimination of its leadership, and other activities that made strong deterrence against Hezbollah to such extent that they, few days ago, when there was a rocket fired from Lebanon, they immediately said it's not us, because they're afraid that Israel will continue the job. We are thankful very much to the United States for taking care of the Houthis, because the US openly says it's not only because the Houthis joined as a, what we call, additional front against Israel. On the way here to IHRA, there was alarm every day. We have ballistic missiles incoming in the last week, including 1 hour ago. And thanks God, successfully, Israel has technological military capacity to intercept. But we are thankful, as I said, America is very much disturbed by the fact that Houthis effectively blocked, not totally, but to a greater extent, maritime transportation. And a lot of cargo now is traveling from, let's say, Asia, Southeast Asia, to Europe, or to Europe, let's say, it has to bypass African continent instead of using Suez Canal, Red Sea and Suez Canal. So hopefully Americans will be successful in their campaign against the Houthis.
Možda ću biti naivno nakon svega. Jednom sam, recimo, kad sam spominjao gospođu Zinu, jednom sam sa njom proveo prije par godina cijelu emisiju u analizi toga što Iran radi i tim planovima koji sežu. To je zanimljivo da Iran parecira svoje planove 20-30 godina unaprijed. Pa će možda izgledati naivno u tom kontekstu pitanje, postoji li ikakva mogućnost motiviranja Irana da zaustavi svoj proksi saveznike u napadima na Izrael?
I wish it was possible. I wish it was very simple. Israel we have nothing against Iranian people. We share no border with Iran. We used to have great relations with Iran during the Shah days. I think maybe that's the reason, one of the reasons for animosity. We owe to great Persian culture a lot, including rebuilding our second temple during the days of Nehemiah and Ezra, and the great king Caesar Koresh. So it looks like in the 21st century, enemies understand if they have a principal positions against you, against any country, you need very strong and effective measures to convince them to back up. and to realize that those policies are wrong, and maybe we should look for policies of cooperation. Iran can become a great country, a great regional power. But by the way, it's important also to mention here, they work not only against Israel. You'll find a lot of Arab countries in the region, especially in the Gulf, very much concerned with the regional policies of Iran, with its activities. And I think also all liberal-minded people in the West should also keep in mind how Iran behaves internally towards the opposition, towards women, and keep it in mind also as well. I mean, it's another facet of Islamic Republic of Islam, of the regime, not of the people.
Kako se nositi sa dezinformacijama, jer je to još jedan rat u kojem Izrael htio ne htio mora sudjelovati. Danas je dobar dio javnosti, ili značajan, je možda bolje kazati, čak i na zapadu, zdvojan u pogledu toga što se u Izraelu zbiva, dezinformiran vrlo često, i kako se jednostavno suprotstaviti tim dezinformacijama.
Well, all of us, we are human and we are busy, and we, unlike in the past, we mostly get our information from our mobile phones, and sometimes it's not what used to be like an information agency that everyone believes that they're reliable and what they're saying is the truth. It's mostly for social networks, and social networks are full of fakes and full of propaganda. So we are living, as philosophers and political scientists are saying, and not only in Israel, of course, we are living in information age with its advantages and disadvantages. And we also not really know what is the truth, okay? I'm saying that people in the West, including Croatia, you can divide them between those who would like to understand really what's happening. It means to understand what Hamas stands for and why Iran is so aggressive against Israel and feeds this war and feeds its conflict. Those who know but don't want to take it into account because maybe they're anti-Semitic or anti-Zionist, and some of them even claim that Israel shouldn't exist. One thing when it comes from the radicals on the jihadi side, the other thing, it's very disturbing when it comes from the people in the Western societies, okay, including in US, Canada, Australia, and in Europe. And there are those who are probably majority, who are busy with their everyday life, and this conflict that doesn't care about it, okay? And then the only thing that impacts them is the headlines and the pictures, that one that you showed with terrible destruction in Gaza. And people tend to make sometimes decisions emotionally. And when they see such a destruction, and when they know the state of Israel is a very powerful country economically and the military and otherwise, they tend normally, sometimes, to feel compassion with the weak. And the weak are conceived to be Palestinians. And this is the situation. And the situation, if you add another angle, arithmetical, I call it, angle, that's speaking about information warfare, speaking about social network, one side, pro-Palestinian side, has an advantage, numerical advantage, of think about how many people are online when it comes to Arab countries. In Muslim countries, we're speaking about huge quantity of potential sympathizers. And you add to it those people on the left, progressive left, that feel the sympathy, but they don't care that the future may turn Middle East into vision of the radical Islam, where the Sunni or the Shia character will take control. And for them, to be on the Palestinian side creates this kind of numerical arithmetic advantage that we can observe.
Hvala vam lijepo na vašem vremenu, hvala što ste bili moj gost i naš gost u studiju. I naravno da želim i vama i meni da sljedeći put kad se vidimo više ne pričamo o problemu Gaze. Da to bude i za nas koliko može biti nakon ovih rujna. Hvala lijepo.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Hvala vama što ste bili sa nama. Gledajte nas naravno sljedeći puta. Do tada, doviđenja.